Concussion and chronic traumatic encephalopathy litigation has become a defining legal and moral battleground for contact football. Former and current players continue to bring suits alleging that leagues and team officials failed to protect athletes from repetitive head trauma, delayed or concealed critical research findings, and resisted implementing meaningful safety reforms. Those lawsuits have shifted public attention from isolated injury reports to systemic questions about design, culture, and accountability in a sport built on controlled violence. Legal actions have exposed how medical uncertainty, institutional incentives, and cultural norms combine to heighten risk. Plaintiffs argue that teams and leagues prioritized competitive advantage and revenue over rigorous injury protocols, that diagnoses were downplayed, and that return-to-play decisions sometimes ignored long-term neurological harm. Defendants have pointed to evolving science, rule changes, and investments in player health, but litigation continues because many affected players seek acknowledgment, compensation, and lasting institutional change rather than only private settlements. The litigation raises urgent ethical questions about safety protocols. Reasonable safeguards require consistent concussion recognition, independent medical authority, and conservative return-to-play standards that prioritize brain health over short-term roster needs. Ethical practice also demands proactive risk reduction through equipment innovation, rule adjustments that limit high-impact exposures, and transparent, standardized monitoring across levels of play. Without those measures, litigation will persist as players insist on structural reforms that meaningful protocols would have rendered unnecessary. Transparency and the stewardship of scientific knowledge are central ethical concerns. Institutions that sponsor research or control player data have an ethical duty to share findings promptly, to avoid selective disclosure, and to fund independent studies that test industry assumptions. True transparency also includes clear communication with players about known risks, uncertain outcomes, and preventive strategies so that informed consent becomes more than a slogan. When disclosure fails, trust erodes, and legal remedies often become the only avenue for truth and accountability. The future of contact football depends on how these ethical and legal pressures reshape the game. The sport can adapt through rule changes, better enforcement, technological safeguards, and a culture that rewards player safety as core value. Alternatively, failure to act could lead to continued litigation, diminishing participation at youth and amateur levels, and a public re-evaluation of tolerable risk. The path forward requires alignment of medical integrity, institutional transparency, and ethical leadership so that the game survives with the brains of its players protected and respected.